SuperFreakonomics, Global Cooling, Patriotic Prostitutes, and Why Suicide Bombers Should Buy Life Insurance. In SuperFreakonomics, Stephen Levitt and Stephen Dubner take readers even deeper into the world of economics, exploring a diverse set of unconventional topics with their trademark analytical style. The book focuses on how incentives shape human behavior, revealing surprising insights about issues ranging from global warming to prostitution to the economics of suicide bombers. Building on the success of Freakonomics, SuperFreakonomics continues to explore the hidden side of everything, highlighting how economic thinking can illuminate complex issues. Chapter 1: Why Suicide Bombers Should Buy Life Insurance. The book opens with a fascinating exploration of the economics of terrorism, specifically focusing on the motivations behind suicide bombers. Levitt and Dubner examine the psychology and economics of suicide bombings and explain how terrorists are often motivated by incentives that are not just political or ideological but economic as well. The authors present the shocking idea that if terrorists had access to life insurance policies, they might be less likely to blow themselves up. In their analysis, Levitt and Dubner suggest that life insurance could act as a counter-incentive, which would reduce the potential financial rewards to suicide bombers and undermine the recruitment process. They argue that while there is no simple solution to terrorism, applying economic principles to the problem can offer a fresh perspective on counteracting it. This chapter goes on to explore the different financial incentives that guide the lives of both terrorists and the people who fund them, revealing a complex relationship between politics, religion, and money. Through this, the authors show how the economics of the situation can offer insights into reducing terrorism's appeal. Chapter 2: The Fix is in the Economics of Cheating. In this chapter, Levitt and Dubner discuss the economic incentives behind cheating, not only in school or sports but in the workplace and in relationships. They use a series of real-world examples to explore how cheating often stems from a misalignment of incentives, where the rewards for cheating outweigh the consequences. One example in this chapter looks at the world of professional sports, where athletes, coaches, and even referees are sometimes tempted to manipulate the system for personal gain. They discuss how teams are able to cheat their way into wins, skewing results and creating a sense of inequality. In the business world, the authors explain how incentives such as bonuses or stock options lead employees and executives to manipulate financial results or engage in unethical behavior to meet certain targets. The result is often a distortion of the systems, whether in sports or business, with widespread consequences that can be hard to undo. Levitt and Dubner also discuss how different markets and systems have built-in mechanisms to counteract cheating. By focusing on the incentives that drive behavior, they show how these mechanisms are often insufficient, and why it's essential to design systems that provide better deterrence against dishonesty. Chapter 3: Unbelievable Truths About Global Warming. One of the most contentious issues in modern times is climate change, and Levitt and Dubner take an unconventional approach to the topic in this chapter. They explore the economic aspects of global warming, questioning some of the widely accepted beliefs about how to combat it. Instead of focusing solely on reducing carbon emissions, the authors introduce the idea of geoengineering, specifically, the possibility of artificially cooling the planet by injecting aerosols into the stratosphere. They compare this method to the natural cooling effect of volcanic eruptions, which release particles that have been shown to reduce the Earth's temperature. The authors present this as a potentially viable, though controversial, solution to the warming crisis, demonstrating how economic incentives might encourage such extreme measures. Levitt and Dubner also discuss the costs of reducing emissions through traditional means, such as carbon taxes and renewable energy solutions. They argue that while these efforts are important, they may not be sufficient or even the most effective approach to addressing global warming in the near term. The chapter raises difficult ethical questions about how to balance economic costs with environmental benefits and explores the potential unintended consequences of geoengineering. Chapter 4: The Economics of Prostitution, the world's oldest profession gets a makeover. In this chapter, Levitt and Dubner dive into the economics of prostitution, a subject often viewed through a moral or legal lens but here examined from a purely economic perspective. They argue that many people fail to realize that the prostitution industry operates just like any other market, with supply and demand determining the price of services. The authors look at the role of middlemen, the pimps, and how they control access to prostitutes. They examine how economic principles like supply, demand, and competition influence the pricing and availability of sex work. Levitt and Dubner also investigate the effect of laws and regulations on prostitution, comparing the legal status of prostitution in various countries. They suggest that decriminalizing or regulating prostitution could reduce the risks for sex workers and improve overall safety, similar to how the legal status of other professions influences behavior and outcomes. Another surprising finding in this chapter is how certain economic incentives can make sex work more efficient, like the role of online reviews for independent prostitutes or the way modern brothels operate more like businesses, optimizing their services to cater to specific customer needs. The chapter sheds light on the intersection of economics, regulation, and morality in the context of the oldest profession. Chapter 5: Why are drug dealers still living with their moms? This chapter revisits the topic from the first book, examining why many low-level drug dealers still live with their mothers despite being involved in what seems to be a lucrative and high-risk profession. Levitt and Dubner continue to explore the economics of the drug trade, focusing on the lives of street-level dealers. They investigate the hierarchy of drug dealing, which is structured much like any business, with a few people at the top making substantial profits while those at the bottom earn very little. Levitt and Dubner explore the incentives that drive individuals to participate in this industry, despite the high risks involved. They highlight how drug dealers often make less than they would in a minimum wage job, and why, despite the glamorization of the trade in popular culture, the reality is far less rewarding. The authors also discuss the importance of group dynamics and social status in the drug dealing world and how people make decisions based on their environment and the limited options available to them. They also explore the lack of access to education and job opportunities as a key factor driving people to pursue illicit activities, even when the economic outcomes are often disappointing. Chapter 6: The True Economics of Cleanliness and Sanitation. In this chapter, Levitt and Dubner take on the economics of cleanliness and sanitation, revealing how the costs associated with public health are often shaped by incentives. They explore how different cultures and countries handle sanitation and hygiene, examining the broader economic and social effects of cleanliness. The authors investigate the ways that government incentives and regulations have influenced sanitation practices over time, as well as the relationship between cleanliness and health outcomes. For example, they discuss how incentives in both developed and developing countries shape public health policies and how those policies affect individuals' behavior when it comes to hygiene and sanitation. They use examples from various countries to show how sanitation practices can vary greatly depending on local economic conditions and government regulation. By examining incentives and behaviors, Levitt and Dubner reveal that cleaning practices are often driven more by economics than by concern for health or social norms. Conclusion: The hidden side of everything, again. In SuperFreakonomics, Levitt and Dubner continue their exploration of the hidden side of everything, using economics to unveil surprising truths about topics as varied as global warming, crime, terrorism, prostitution, and education. The book deepens the themes from Freakonomics, showing how human behavior is driven by incentives, whether they are monetary, social, or political. Each chapter provides new insights into the ways incentives shape our decisions and the surprising consequences that follow. Through their analysis of data and human behavior, Levitt and Dubner challenge our conventional thinking, encouraging readers to look beyond the obvious and explore the hidden factors that influence the world around us. The authors show that by examining the incentives behind actions, we can better understand complex societal issues and even come up with unconventional solutions to some of the world's most pressing problems. SuperFreakonomics pushes readers to think differently and to question what they think they know about the world.